database. How do you get Mona Lisa in a database? How do you order art? How do you index art? How do you index nameless or anonymous art? And that's what we're going to talk about. You have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, I hope the audio works, because from here it sounds funny, but if you can't hear me, just put up your hand. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about fits slightly to the talk that Michael Nielsen was giving yesterday about modern electronic stuff, wikis and blogs use in science as for hard science. And I'm going to talk about, the essays of our small group within the Max Planck Institute for History of Science in trying to establish software tools and make the modern tools that are there, including the internet, available to scholars working in the humanities and in cultural heritage. So I'm not covering all of the stuff that is done in culture, like also Wikipedia and others, but mostly focusing on what our institute is doing, which is mostly concerned with historical sources, which is what historians work on, and which is also closely related to the area of cultural heritage, which is what museums, collections, collectors are dealing with, so the artifacts and objects and old texts and other stuff. So I'm going to, I've already been on the first point, what I mean with humanities and cultural heritage, then briefly show that the dreams and possibilities that are there with the new technologies, the internet and other stuff, and then briefly focusing on some of the, so to say, political issues around copyright, owner's right, and access to the sources and open access movement. And then I'm going to show some of the, so to say, technical issues which are around how do you deal with images, with large text, with bibliographical databases. Why do we have to try to invent new tools for the scholars to use? So with the internet, I mean, these days when you look at Wikipedia and others, you really have the impression that a network of all human knowledge, past and present, is really going to be possible to at least to be close at hand. And the stuff that additionally you can do in electronic form, like when you have a scanned image of an old rare book, then you can make it accessible to everybody on the internet, and he does not have to come to a special library, he does not have to gain access and talk to people or be told the way, and also, a slight side point of this is, for example, that in developing countries where historical or at least cultural artifacts are used and brought to the internet, often it is easier for the people also in developing countries to be able to access them over the internet than to be able to go somewhere and try to go to some museum. And then there's also the points of sustainability that, we had the case in Germany just a few months ago where the archive of the city of Cologne was fell into a hole made by subway construction, and around, the material artifacts of around 1,000 years of city history were very much endangered of being lost. And in all these cases, it would be good to have as much of it digitized on the internet and in other electronic archives as possible. There's also other cases. I'm briefly showing a project dealing with cuneiform clay tablets, where some of the clay tablets that you can see in the electronic archive do no longer exist anymore because they were in Baghdad and got destroyed or taken away. So there is really also sustainability, a preserving aspect of electronic representations. And adding to the network effect, of course, the point is that to be able to do mash-ups, to link from one text into the sources and back, all the material should be as freely accessible as possible. So if you make a link on some site to the page of a book, first of all, it has to be possible to just link to this certain page, and also you cannot do that when then dialogue pops up that forces you to pay money or to register, and you're not registered and maybe you're not allowed. So a lot of all these internet tools only work or best work when all the material is really freely accessible and caution is taken to make it really integratable with other sources. So what I'm briefly showing, two examples from our institute and another older example which I think also shows some of the problems that many of the projects in the area of cultural heritage have or had so far. One of the projects is the is that my mic? It's CDLI, it's the Cuneiform Digital Library Initiative, which deals with cuneiform text, so these clay tablets made in Mesopotamia and Babylon 3,500 years ago. And the idea of CDLI is to collect all of these texts and try to get them together in a database, because currently all of them are spread all over the world. So also specimens that were found just next to each other and had some context with each other. One may be in a private collection in New York and the other may be in a museum in St. Petersburg. So this is really one of the things that the internet makes possible, to create such collections that really interrelate things, or make it possible to interrelate things that are in different pieces of the world, and you don't have to travel to place A and place B. And maybe now you can discover new things which were not really possible to discover before. This is one of the older projects, and at least its online version has been online since 2001, which is rather early in internet times. And currently it has